Welcome to Sincast, presented by Cinemasins.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Sincast. This is Chris Atkinson from Cinemasins, joined as always by the voice of Cinemasins, Jeremy Scott.
Hello.
And also music video sins writer, Barrett Scher.
Howdy.
All right, guys. 1978.
Nothing is over until we decide it is.
1978.
It is a year, it was a year not so filled with very many great movies.
It's funny, when we did the last podcast, we were complaining about doing 77 because it had so few good movies that Barrett even asked, maybe we should just skip 77 and go on to 78. Now that we're here at 78, it's not any better.
Yeah, what happened? I think really there was a Star Wars effect, right? Because, well, I mean, Star Wars effect didn't really happen in 77 as much as it happened to everything that happened after that, but... and I'll just go ahead and say, if you guys ever want to read like an awesome history of movies, read Easy Rider's Raging Bulls, which talks about this effect of how Jaws and Star Wars sort of affected movies after that and everything. 1978, I don't know, it might be excused for it, but you would think that all those movies were in production before the big Star Wars, whatever. Okay, so what we have here is like a few... like good movies, and there's like a couple that people might consider great here. But there's one huge one here that everybody I know considers great, and I do not, and that is The Deer Hunter. We will not repeat the Academy's mistake here, making that movie the best picture of 1978.
Well, I can tell you you're right, because I am also one of the few that does not like The Deer Hunter.
Yeah.
So.
I really feel like The Deer Hunter is one of those movies that people look fondly back on because it has that one intense scene with Walken and De Niro, and that's it. That's about it. Like, everything else in it is just boring bullshit. I've seen it 4 times at least, trying to get back. You know, like, man, the first time maybe I was just in a bad mood or something or whatever. Maybe I'm being a dick. I watched it again and I'm like, man, this movie. What is it? Why do people love this movie? I don't like it at all. Anyway, 1978, The Deer Hunter won Best Picture. Mm-hmm. This was the year of Superman.
Yes, it was.
Mm-hmm. What else, guys? Do you have any?
Well, one of your very favorite movies, Halloween.
Yes,
Halloween. In 78.
Yes.
Which I've heard you cite on this podcast as probably your favorite horror movie.
Yep.
We also had, I believe, the third Bad News Bears movie came out this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
This time in Japan.
It was a memorable moment when they went to Japan.
But no, Invasion of the Body Snatchers is 78, right?
Oh, yes. And it has one of the most horrifying images that Barrett was talking about us earlier today, the Donald Sutherland pointing scene, which you will see in almost every clip of scary movie clips. That's a professional actor right there that can make something that ridiculous into something. Whoa! Yeah. Like I'm actually frightened.
Yeah. No, I was mentioning just a second ago that it's a creepy year. It was a really creepy year.
Very much so.
Yeah, you got Halloween. The Deer Hunter is atmospherically creepy. Midnight Express is creepy on a whole different level. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And I'm going to go ahead and say my pick is Dawn of the Dead. That is, yes, it's a horror movie, but I don't look at it as a horror movie really at all. It's a satire, it's a commentary, it's a social piece of art or something like that, that was so good that it was actually remade into also a pretty good movie. In 2004.
Yeah.
That was basically just updated, and I love that stuff. Part of it is that I just have this fascination with shopping malls and putting a zombie horde on the outside, and then the fact that you can build almost a society within the confines of a shopping mall is very interesting to me. And, you know, the ethos of the consumerism and the dynamic between the people, which continued the whole racial tension that started in Night of the Living Dead. I just think top to bottom, it's a terrific and had a great ending too.
By the way, as an aside, the remake was Zack Snyder.
Yes, it was,
and was written by James Gunn. You have one guy who eventually became a huge Disney Marvel guy, and then another guy who became a huge DC guy, and they combined together to make really like one of the few great remakes. Mm-hmm. You were mentioning 1978 is a creepy ass year. Okay, so Animal House came out. That's one of the most. That's as influential as it gets as far as comedies are concerned. It ushered in all that frat boy mentality stuff. And, of course, as we discussed before, has, like, crimes, actually, and actual crimes. They're just peep in on the ladies from the ladder. And then, but it's also the year of I Spit on Your Grave, which is one of the most disturbing movies I've ever seen. It has like an awful beginning. Like you just like you love the revenge, but you have to sit through the beginning of that movie. That's just it is the worst thing I've seen, and maybe one of the worst things I've ever seen on film. Then you have Pretty Baby, which had an underage Brooke Shields doing nude scenes. Oh my God. How in the world did they get away with that movie? It was the 70s is why. It's 70s. Like, they didn't care about that. That's why. Oh my God. I mean, how in the world was that movie made? Even a movie like Watership Down, which I used to watch all the time. That's a scary-ass movie for kids. Yeah. But I wish they would make movies like... I wish they'd make cartoons like that.
Oh, yeah.
These days. Those movies that aren't afraid to, like... But see, now, children are precious at this point. You just can't... You can't show them a Watership Down anymore. They're not old enough. Even though I watched it when I was 7 and I turned out okay, I think. But yeah, 78, creepy year. And anyway, what else? Do you have anything else?
Grease came out in 78.
Yes, Grease came out. Okay.
And, as far as, if we were going to at least discuss cultural impact and relevance, that had a pretty huge impact.
Oh, yeah.
And we were talking about, in another podcast, I think, we were talking about how... Saturday Night Fever sort of defined what disco looked like, right? I think Grease defined what the 50s looked like to people like me in the 80s who had no idea what the 50s really looked like. I think Grease, poodle skirts, those cars that they race and...
The hair.
Well, and I'm sorry, this theme keeps coming up. The Summer Lovin' song adds to this craziness that's in 1978. Summer Lovin' is not like the nicest of songs. It's sung happily.
It's a little assaulty.
It's a little assaulty.
It's kind of like Every Breath You Take, where you think it's a good song, but there's something really creepy going on.
It sounds nice. It doesn't sound like he's stalking her. He probably deserves to have her. Blah, blah, blah. But Grease is a really... Yeah, I love Grease, though. I mean, despite that little bit of thing.
Man, that is a very rewatchable... Well, as evidenced by the Fox Live thing from a couple of months ago, like, that is such a relatable story. And
didn't you call it your favorite musical?
It is the best musical on film of all time. And it's enduring as far as the music itself, the performances. I'm going to talk about Jon Travolta in every podcast from this point forward.
Excellent.
He's the new Kenneth Branagh, basically. And his performance, man, it inspired so many Halloween costumes. Like, if you're a husband and a wife or boyfriend and a girlfriend and you're out of ideas, you can always go as John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John from Grease. Just throw on some black jeans and a jacket and some tight pants for the girl. And that's it. You're fine.
Yeah. You're all set.
I was also looking at this. This seems like the year of, like, Tarantino's, like, Nirvana or whatever, because it has, like, Game of Death. And it's got, what is there? There's another, The Inglourious Bastards, which is where he got the title for that movie. Drunken Master, was the other
Drunken
that came
Master,
out.
that's great.
So it seems like this is probably where, like, Tarantino's wheelhouse was 1978 or whatever. A lot of these movies I have not seen, but I know that he cited them before.
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, that's what.
So what is your pick, Jeremy? For
all right, well, you already picked.
Yeah.
And I'm going Superman. And it's both because, as you said, I think in the last podcast, it's a really solid performance and solid superhero movie. I think you have to consider the era in which it was made, right? I don't think it holds a candle to The Dark Knight. We're talking about a different era, but there's a nostalgia there and definitely cultural impact out the ass, as every modern superhero film owes something to Superman. So I'm going Superman, and it's up to Chris.
This is definitely going to be a three-way tie here because
should have just stopped with three.
Yeah, I was about to. You'll hear the hitch. I'm going to say Halloween, and now we've got two horror movies competing against it. But Halloween is for me what horror movies should strive to be, where there are things lurking on the edge of the frame, and it's not just a whole bunch of jump scare moments. There are jump scare moments in Halloween, but the idea that he's always out there somewhere, and the way that camera moves throughout is the way horror movies should be done. And after that, it became, it sort of inspired all the other stuff, the slasher movies after that. Which is weird. They looked at Halloween and said, let's make it where we have basically monsters going around let's finding the most creative ways to kill people that they can, and it just became like R-rated slash fest or whatever. But Halloween is not that. It's
suspense as much as anything.
Yeah, it's more suspense than it is let's see how creative we can get showing someone dying. But that movie's genuinely frightening and scary and all that. So I can't think of anything better than this movie.
All right, so then we have to go to second choices to determine what the best movie is.
Yeah.
All right, so should we go in the same order?
Yeah, I'm not going to put either of your movies as my second pick.
Okay.
So we may go a couple of rounds. I think I have to settle on, not settle, but I think Grease has to be up there as my second one. Grease and Animal House would probably be 2 and 2A for me.
Okay.
Because Animal House, you can't, all of the screwball college comedies and the National Lampoon's kind of brand came out of that sort of mentality. So I think it was incredibly influential. It's incredibly rewatchable. There's a lot of crimes. There's a lot of drunken frivolity. There's Belushi. There's just... I believe Donald Sutherland is also in that, showing his ass.
Yeah, he is.
All right, I'm rethinking it. I would put Animal House as number 2 and Grease as number 3.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm putting Invasion of the Body Snatchers number 2, and I'm putting Animal House 3.
Okay. Well, then...
This is going to get muddy.
Well, and I'm also going to put Animal House 2, which also might, by default, make Animal House the number 1 movie, because... None of us have said each other's number 1 as our 2.
That's true.
So it might have enough second place votes to make the number 1 here.
And if we break out the electoral math, it might be
right. Yeah, exactly. May have to do it with the electoral math, or we may have to, leave it up to Twitter to decide. Nah. No, I think we're going to take a stance here. I think we all said Animal House.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I think that's a fair way to decide.
And its second place votes are going to pass all the other ones.
And there is, especially listening to Barrett talk about it just a second ago, there's just so much ode to that movie. Like even Neighbors 2, which is now running, would not exist without Animal House.
Yeah. Right.
Old School,
that's
PCU, all of them.
I credit Old School with getting us back to that R-rated comedy, because all through the 90s, you had Kevin Smith stuff, but you had mostly a lot of watered down PG-13 comedies, and then Road Trip and Old School and all that started making it come back and everything, and that's where we got Judd Apatow come back and all sort of stuff. So it all owes it to Animal House, really.
Which I don't think the Academy gave Best Picture to that year.
They did not. They gave Best Picture to Deer Hunter.
That's right.
And
another screwball comedy.
That screwball comedy, The Deer Hunter. Yeah, I'm sure that almost everybody who's listening to this is like, "Oh my God, The Deer Hunter's so great!" I can't stand with you on that.
Yeah, and also we somehow didn't pick Superman.
Yeah.
Which I'm not bitter, even though it was my first choice. I'm just saying there will be fans who will be shocked we did not pick Superman.
Yeah, well, and that's the way this silly round robin type thing goes here.
Right.
If we can't agree on something, we're gonna have to go with the one that's more oft-cited.
Yep.
So Animal House wins over Deer Hunter. That's right. You heard it here first.
You heard it here first from 1978.
Yeah, exactly.
Breaking news.
So now we're going to get into, I guess, a loaded topic, as I could probably go on forever on this.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's directors with the most variance in their careers.
Most variance in their careers?
Yes, that have just the widest span of work.
My name is Marty DeBerge. I'm a filmmaker.
Who the fuck am I? I'm the director. Shaka Luther King, that's who the fuck I am.
Filmmaking is not about the tiny details. It's about the big picture.
I have one in my back pocket that I've talked about before with friends, and that's Rob Reiner. Who has done romantic comedy.
Great one.
He's done serious military courtroom drama. Rob Reiner is my first vote.
Well, yeah, he had, like, This Is Spinal Tap,
Yep.
and he had A Few Good Men, and he had When Harry Met Sally.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had that, he had one of the biggest winning streaks going for a really long time, because he did This Is Spinal Tap, all those, like, in a row, When Harry Met Sally, A Few Good Men, and all that. And then he had North, one of the worst movies that came out. And then he started making a lot of just, like, The Ghost of Mississippi, and what was the one after that? Oh, he did The American President, which was really good. What else? And then, but yeah, The Story of Us, which wasn't very.
Back in the Wheelhouse days.
Yeah.
This is the run I always Spinal Tap, and we got The Sure Thing after that, which I could do without. Stand By Me.
Yeah.
Princess Bride. When Harry Met Sally. Misery. A Few Good Men.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
And all
that's
those
so
are
good.
like real different movies.
That's what I'm saying. He genre hops like crazy.
Yeah.
And they're all high quality. It's a great run of excellence, but also a great little 5-movie run to illustrate how varied his tastes are as a director.
Yeah.
Another one that I think you and I have talked about before, not in the podcast, is I shouldn't have smoked so much pot on 420. Danny Boyle.
Oh yeah.
Because he's done sci-fi, he's done Train Spotting, he's done Slumdog Millionaire. I feel like genre-wise, he's all over the place, and I love it.
Yeah.
What else? Anybody else? That was a quick conversation.
I was going to say Jon Favreau.
Nice one.
Good call.
Jon Favreau, I believe his debut was Made, which was sort of the kind of pseudo follow-up to Swingers, even though it wasn't really like the same characters or anything like that. But it was him and Vince Vaughn in like a gangster comedy, like takeoff of The Sopranos type of thing.
It featured Puff Daddy, right?
It did. It did. But Made was his first one, and then he did Elf.
Oh yeah.
Which what? You would never expected Jon Favreau to be on such a movie like a Will Ferrell comedy. He did a movie called Zathura, which I didn't really like, but I was. With this stuff with the Jungle Book, that when it came out and everything, somebody thought that was like underrated or whatever. I remember watching it and I did not feel like it deserved much rating, but there might be a few fans of that. Then Ironman, that came out of nowhere. Yeah. Like when I first saw that, I was like, oh, come on. Like, are you really taking this seriously now? And then you watch it, and you're like, well, I guess that was dumb. He also did Cowboys versus Aliens, which wasn't a good movie at all.
Looked pretty.
But, I mean, you're talking about, like, this is going all over the map here. Elf, Iron Man.
Well, and then most recently, Chef.
Yeah, and then he did Chef before just Jungle Book or whatever. But, yeah, Chef, a nice little quiet, like, awesome food movie and everything. And then, Jungle Book, which is, I don't like it, but it's definitely a different movie for him.
Everybody else did.
Yeah. So I mean, Favreau has one of those. It's just, I guess he's a director for hire almost, but he's definitely somebody that studios trust and go to.
Yeah, absolutely.
For anything. So.
Man, I should have, because the idea is directors that have such a varying degree of their scope of work, and Danny Boyle is a perfect example of that. And I was thinking one of my favorite directors, even though all the controversy and everything, is Roman Polanski. Polanski, on the face of it, he does do very different films. Like he did Rosemary's Baby, of course, which was this weird suspense, atmospheric horror type of thing. And then he did Chinatown, which is definitely, not the same film. And, he did other things later on, like he did Macbeth at some point, which is a great version of Macbeth. He did this movie with Johnny Depp called The Ninth Gate that was really good. But he's kind of got this consistent underpinning of like moody and atmosphere and that kind of thing. Although, having said that, like there are some directors where, and even Spielberg is like this, where you can point to it and say like that's a Spielberg movie.
Yeah.
Like even if you didn't know it, you could probably say like, that was probably him. And Polanski, you can probably make that argument. But one person that doesn't come up, in the whole Scorsese, Spielberg conversation as much as I think is Francis Ford Coppola, who has this incredible array of stuff. Obviously, he did The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2, and Apocalypse Now. Like it just between those, it's a huge variance.
And then you throw in The Conversation into the middle of that too, which is completely different movie. It was funny, just as an aside, like that show Billions, its finale was called The Conversation.
Oh, really?
And it had like a moment where somebody is going around looking for bugs and tearing the place apart and everything. And it was a really, like awesome, like titled thing. Because I was wondering, did they title this because of the movie? And sure enough, by the end of it, like, oh yeah, they did a little take on it. Anyway.
That's awesome. But yeah, I think Coppola, because now he's into wine, and I guess I don't even know what the last movie he did. Something fairly recent.
I think it was Youth Without Youth. But I'm not certain on that.
And his daughter has now become probably the more currently famous Coppola director at this point.
Although, I think she started off that way, and she sort of tapered off after Lost in Translation. She did Marie Antoinette and
Bling Ring,
and there was another one, real slow type of Lost in Translation, Virgin Suicides type movie. That was the first movie that she did. But like she started off Virgin Suicides, Lost in Translation, and then everything else after that's been kind of that's not what I don't really like those that much. Bling Ring's okay. Marie Antoinette looks amazing. It's just not a great movie.
I'm going to throw out Steven Soderbergh.
Yeah, that's a perfect one.
Because he's done violence with The Limey. He's done serious drama with Traffic. He's done heist movies with the Ocean's films. He's done straight-up comedy with The Informant. And then he did Magic Mike.
Yeah.
And The Girlfriend Experience. This guy is a guy with lots of different tastes, and he's not scared to explore them. Solaris, there may be certain things that Soderbergh does, but it'd be hard for me to say that's a Soderbergh movie, right?
Yeah.
Even though the camera work is often similar, the tone is different so wildly.
There was a period of time there where the editing style, and this could be more of a tribute to his editor than anything, but Out of Sight and Aaron Brockovich and Traffic and all those movies had that odd jump cut style to it, like, okay, that's Soderbergh. And I think even he probably just like, I want to do something different. So he just like, he changed it up after that. He stopped doing that as much or whatever. He might also be the guy who really launched that indie movement in the 90s with Sex, Lies, and Videotape. That was the movie that sort of launched everybody's like, I can make a movie, I can do it for really cheap and everything, and that's what we started seeing in those early 90s days with Tarantino and Kevin Smith and all these guys. Soderbergh, if you look at his IMDb credits, it's nothing but just all sorts of different stuff.
Right. I'll give you a perfect example of Soderbergh and how genius he is. He took a very basic script for a movie called Side Effects.
Yeah.
And put a very interesting take on it. Like, he got the best performances out of his actors, and like just told the story so beautifully to where you can really take something fairly straightforward and really like turn it on its head.
Yeah. I got another one unless somebody else
go
has.
ahead.
Coen Brothers.
Yeah. Yeah.
In terms of tone and style, they've done everything that I just named for Soderbergh, from gritty crime all the way up to straight comedy.
I will say that you can pretty much tell what a Coen Brothers movie is. That would be my only disagreement with this, is that no matter what genre they go into, there's always a style and a way of their comedy that gets into everything that I can tell that's a Coen Brothers movie or whatever. Even in something as innocuous as Intolerable Cruelty, which has the one scene where there's like the old guy and the tax accountant or whatever. I don't know what it is. I don't know if you guys remember seeing that movie at all. But
block it from my
like,
memory.
it's a guy who, there's like these scenes that they cut to, and it reminds me so much of Hudsucker Proxy, the way this guy's like typing stuff and he's like saying stuff and all that. Even Bridge of Spies, which they wrote, has like, there's a quintessential Coen Brothers like scene written into that, like, like I could tell that was them. But yeah, as far as like genres are concerned, sure, like Miller's Crossing and Barton Fink and like Fargo and Raising Arizona and all that, but they do focus a lot on crime and whatever. So I wouldn't personally include them, but they do have a lot of like different stuff. They have the ability to be like,
What about Zemeckis?
Yeah, Zemeckis, definitely.
He's had a long career, and this movie starts springing to my mind, you've got everything from Back to the Future to The Frighteners and What Lies Beneath and Flight.
Castaway.
Yeah. Like, I feel like he just likes all stories.
Yeah.
Sure, I'll direct that. Like, and I think he's good. I'm not trying to make it sound like he's just taking a paycheck. But you can't tell me that something sounds or looks like a Zemeckis film.
No.
Right? Now, you could have maybe back in the late 80s when he made the Back to the Future movies and Roger Rabbit and all this stuff. But not since. He's gone, I think, almost very intentionally out of his way to vary his resume.
Yeah, and he also has tried to be that. There was this long, I don't know if this is true or not, there's this thought that he had a sort of a rivalry with James Cameron, trying to always top him as far as technology in movies is concerned. So like Polar Express was like one of the first like motion capture animation movies, and then he did it again with A Christmas Carol. And they've had varying degrees of success and everything, and he's never like made that movie that people are like going and seeing in droves, like Avatar, which I'll never understand, but he's never had that type of movie that where I've found the technology that is going to get everybody but yeah, Zemeckis extremely varied and interesting career. What else?
Kubrick.
Yeah.
Kubrick is my absolute favorite director, and you look at the difference between like The Shining, which you talked about ad nauseum at this point, and Dr. Strangelove, and something like Eyes Wide Shut, and 2001: A Space Odyssey, and the whole thing just goes on and on and on. Like I can watch any Kubrick movie, and it's a totally immersive and different experience. I guess the similarities are the pacing and things like that, and the deliberateness of that. But otherwise, like, you're just thrown into a whole different experience each time that you watch a Kubrick movie.
And a lot of times it's forgotten because I think a lot of people really believe that Kubrick became Kubrick when it was like 2001 and everything. Dr. Strangelove is now, is thrown into there, but he's also the director of Spartacus, and he's the director of The Killing, and like all that. And Lolita, which is, I don't think a movie you can really make today, although they did make a remake in the 90s or whatever. We forget a lot about that early cluster of movies that he did before Dr. Strangelove, and those were all interesting and varied movies too, But then it was 2001 where he really became like Kubrick, 2001, Clockwork Orange, and Barry Lyndon. And you know what? I think we mentioned Barry Lyndon in every podcast. This will be like what we thought what we'd do with Kenneth Branagh at the beginning. We're going to find some way to mention Barry Lyndon.
Maybe a good way to look at this topic would be Ridley Scott and Tony Scott.
Yeah.
Because Tony Scott movies all felt the same to me. I liked them, but they were always machismo, tough guy, action films that followed the plan, whereas Ridley, again, uses some of the same techniques, but seems to be drawn to all sorts of different kinds of stories and types of feeling movies.
Yeah, I mean, that guy, and he makes a movie almost every year. He's like 70-something.
Yeah, he's prolific.
Yeah, Tony Scott, the thing for him, I always felt like Don Simpson, Jerry Bruckheimer were the reason why a lot of his movies were the same. And then once he broke from that and everything, I think it started getting, I don't know, a little bit grittier or whatever. But when he was with the Don Simpson, Jerry Bruckheimer, that's where you got Top Gun and Days of Thunder and all these movies that seemed like the same movie.
Crimson Tide,
yeah. A lot of fast-moving objects.
Yeah. And I don't know, strangely enough, I really liked Tony Scott, and he does a genre and a style that's very much like Michael Bay. I think he gave birth to Michael Bay. Simpson and Bruckheimer basically gave birth to Michael Bay. But Tony Scott, somehow, some way, I mean, he did True Romance too. Tony Scott somehow made it palatable, where Bay didn't or whatever. But Ridley Scott, the guy, Black Hawk Down, and what else? He had 2 in 1 year. Oh, he did Hannibal as well. He did that. But those were 2 completely different movies, Kingdom of Heaven.
Yeah.
But he did a lot of, he did Gladiator and Kingdom of Heaven. Those kind of run together.
Didn't he do Egypt, Gods and Kings or whatever?
Yeah,
too?
he did.
So he has
that
epic
series of BC movies or whatever.
He was just trying to check the box.
Yes. Yeah, I mean it's almost shocking he didn't do this Ben-Hur remake, which looks exactly note for note everything he's done.
But he did Matchstick Men, right?
He did. Matchstick Men.
Small, intimate
Matchstick Men is a really good movie.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's one of the few, like, when when you want to talk about, like, Nicolas Cage as an awful actor, that's one of the movies that you can cite as he disproves it right there. He's great. He's great in that. He's got a bunch of great roles, and Matchstick Men's one of them.
I think you can make a case for Richard Linklater.
Because I almost named him.
Well, no, yeah, for sure. You can
absolutely.
Okay, so Linklater came onto the scene with Slacker, which is your, quintessential made-for-nothing independent movie. He translated that into Dazed and Confused, which is one of the best movies you'll see about, being at that time of your life, seeing like high school and everything. One of the best movies you'll ever see that way. But then he'll make some genre movies. Like, he made the Newton Boys. Nobody remembers the Newton Boys. But he did School of Rock. And then he did the Bad News Bears remake. But he also did, like, these amazing animation movies like Waking Life and The Scanner Darkly. And then
he did Boyhood.
He did Boyhood,
which is wildly different.
Completely different. Well, and that was another, like, when I heard about him doing this, I was like, that's exactly the director who would be doing this. Like, I'm going to make a movie and I'm going to show the same actor aging for 12 years or whatever. It's like, I'm going to make a movie that takes 12 years to make. In the meantime, he does this trilogy of fantastic Before Sunrise, Sunset, Midnight movies. They're all good. How in the world is that possible? You don't see 3 movies that are good in any kind of trilogy ever, and he made them over a span of 20 years. These 3 movies are all great. And I'm forgetting, like, some. He's made a million movies, like Suburbia, and what else was there?
Everybody
Wants Some, which I haven't seen
the spiritual antecedent of Dazed and Confused. School of Rock was really the outlier there. Because it was just this, obviously mostly because of Jack Black, but it was just this broad slapstick comedy that really just got the best of because I guess it's involving kids and it has this lovable actor and everything. It has Mike White and everything.
Of a movie.
Yeah, no, it's so good.
It hits all the beats that it needs to hit. And it's great.
And you might be hard pressed to find somebody who's got that many movies out that has not really. He's only missed 2 or 3 times out of it. He's made countless movies at this point. Well, he could count them, but like, but he's made a lot of movies. Is what I'm trying to say.
I'm done counting.
Yeah, done counting. After 20, I'm done. But he's made so many movies, but there's like only like you have a Bad News Bears, you have a Newton Boys in there, but
Newton Boys.
He also made that movie Tape, which had Ethan Hawke, Robert Sean Leonard, and Uma Thurman.
In the hotel room.
In the hotel room.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, good, really, really good movie. And it's so, the way everything pans out in that movie is so unexpected. Like you're like, okay, well, I know where this is going, and then like all the characters just like, there's some revelations that show up in that movie. They're like, that's a really interesting one.
I don't know when I'll have a chance to talk about this guy, so I'm going to shoehorn him into this discussion. But Phil Alden Robinson,
yeah,
guy that directed Sneakers, a movie we've talked about a lot, that you should watch. Also, Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
Two very different movies with very similar soundtracks. Then he dropped off the face of the earth for like 11 years and comes back to make a Band of Brothers episode. Then he makes The Sum of All Fears with Ben Affleck. And then he's basically disappeared again. He's doing episodes of The Good Wife or something now.
Yeah, that's really like what happened with that guy? And then every time I've looked him up, I've never found like a real reason.
Right, like with McTiernan, he went to prison.
Yeah.
And then he came back and made more movies.
Yeah,
but this guy didn't go to prison.
No.
So I don't know. I'm curious about it because those first two, Field of Dreams and Sneakers, are just such home runs. Yeah. That, I wonder what did we miss out on in that 11-year gap that he just didn't make? And
I don't know, this is probably a discussion for another type of podcast, but there are a lot of those type of directors like Stacy Tidal, who did The Last Supper, the movie about the liberals bringing back conservatives for dinner and killing them. That Stacy Tidal did that movie, and now I don't know if you necessarily consider that a director's dream of a movie or anything, but to have all those actors all at once and make a really good movie out of it and everything is got to count for something for sure. And then she disappeared off the face of the earth. Now there's a horror movie coming out this summer that I can't remember the name of, but I saw the trailer for it and it doesn't look very good. But she's been gone for more than 20 years.
What's she been doing?
I don't know.
What about Catherine Bigelow?
I was just going to say that, actually.
Yeah, Catherine Bigelow's made some different ones. Although Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30 are basically in that same...
Yeah, but Strange Days is wildly different than those two
Strange Days is very different. Point Break.
K-19?
Yeah, K-19, The Widowmaker.
It's the submarine movie I watched the least. That and U-571.
Yeah.
By the way, try to show up very drunk in a movie theater and try to get tickets for U-571. Try to get that out of your mouth because it wasn't happening.
I told you the story about how Josh and I always used to order movie tickets at the theater by pronouncing the title wrong on purpose. I told you that story. So, like, when we went to Species, he went up and he goes, "One for Speckies, please." And we went back to the same theater when Species 2 came out. He goes, "One for Speckies 2, please." I don't remember what came between, though. Between the 80s stuff and Strange Days and then Hurt Locker, Zero Dark 30, what did she make?
Yeah, and I'm sure she's done a couple other movies that we've heard of, but we just never attribute. This is going to be a weird podcast.
Well, it's fun. We're exploring as we go. We can't name the Tarantinos and the Spielbergs because they don't fit the criteria.
No.
And so, we have to throw some out to figure out who works and who doesn't.
Yeah.
Fincher, I don't think works. Stylistically and tonally, it's too similar.
Yeah.
Ben Affleck doesn't work. He's made 3 kick-ass films, but they all feel like the work of the same director and the same basic serious drama take.
Yeah.
Kevin Smith. When
Kevin
you're
Smith.
watching a Kevin Smith movie.
Kevin Smith is... I think he fits.
You think, well, not anymore. Yeah, I guess after the 90s, he started really branching
now
out.
that he's made the horror walrus movie, and now he's making a tween yoga hosers movie for teenagers.
Yeah.
I think he fits because when you're listening to Kevin Smith dialogue.
Yeah.
And that's his greatest strength. But I think from movie to movie, they're pretty different in terms of at least topic, not necessarily tone all the time. Because he was straight R-rated comedy for the first 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
You'd probably lump all those in together, but I don't know. I think he might fit.
There was definitely a tonal shift between Mallrats and Chasing Amy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a big leap.
Well, and Chasing Amy was his sort of attempt to make a more grown-up movie, even though he did still put in a lot of little childish things and whatever. And then he tried to do the same thing with Jersey Girl, which unfortunately got caught up in the whole Ben Affleck J-Lo mess, even though J-Lo's in it for 5 minutes.
Right. She
Geely
calls herself out of there real quick.
Yes, and Geely came out the same year, so already he was getting pounded on that. So,
but if you watch that movie, tonally, again, it's got George Carlin in it, so there are moments, but tonally, it's really sweet. Like he's going for something completely different.
It's PG-13 too.
Yeah. So I think he might fit.
I'm glad
somehow, some way, like a square peg in a round hole or whatever. what else do we have here?
I love Brad Bird, but he can't fit.
Yeah.
All of his movies are family fun adventures.
Maybe not enough to films.
Right, and that's the other problem, is that there's plenty of directors that... Okay, well, how about Spike Lee?
Spike Lee has made a lot of varying movies.
Mm-hmm.
Do the Right Thing, Malcolm X, obviously... I mean, Do the Right Thing and Malcolm X are not the same anyway. But they are racially charged movies. But Do the Right Thing, and both of those movies are fantastic, by the way. And I was thinking about Spike Lee the other day, how many movies I love of his, even though he's only made like a couple of movies people consider classics, like Do the Right Thing, Malcolm X. But I love The 25th Hour with Edward Norton. Yeah. That movie is really good. I love He Got Game. Like as I've seen that movie 1 billion times. What else is there?
Inside Man?
Inside Man. And you're talking about, like, the guy has gone from super, like, low-budget movies and stuff like that to something as slick and produced as Inside Man.
Inside Man could be a Ridley Scott movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a Spike Lee movie at all.
Yeah. And I mean, he knocks that out of the park. And Summer of Sam does have the stupid talking dog scene or whatever. I think it was a talking dog.
Yeah, but that movie
Find your soulmate, Homer.
Yeah. But I actually like the dynamic of Summer of Sam.
That movie is very misunderstood.
Yeah, because here's the problem. When you make a movie about the son of Sam that doesn't include the son of Sam, then you've got it's like that argument. Well, not argument, but it's like that thing we were talking about with Sorcerer. You got William Friedkin's Sorcerer. You know, like here's the director of The Exorcist coming out with this obviously magician movie that's horrific. And no, it's an adventure movie. Yeah, it's the same sort of thing. Summer of Sam, but it's really more about the people and their paranoia during the Son of Sam.
I got one.
Yep.
Ron Howard.
Yeah, Oof. Ron Howard counts.
Because he did Splash. Mm-hmm. And more recently he's doing that racing drama. In the middle we had Apollo 13, Backdraft.
A Beautiful Mind.
I feel like he's got a lot of varied interests.
And before Ron Howard, we knew, like, he did Willow, and he did The Night Shift, and he did Parenthood.
Oh, yeah.
He made The Paper, didn't he?
He made The Paper.
Yeah.
Howard's always been sort of a weird director for me because I know he's capable of, like, greatness, but a lot of times his movies don't hit that. But Apollo 13 and Cinderella Man, those are great movies. Yep. The Paper's an underrated one. But, yeah, there's a lot of those in there. You're like, Ron Howard. What was that one he did with Ed Harris? No, it was Tommy Lee Jones.
The Missing.
The Missing. Yeah. That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Kate Blanchett.
Yeah, and it's got Evan Rachel Wood in it.
Yeah.
That movie was one I just really wanted to love, and I couldn't. And but he's made a lot of, like, fun movies and a lot of good movies, and yeah, he's all over the map there. Comedy, drama. He's made a few fantasy movies. He made Cocoon.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
The precursor to Batteries Not Included.
Yeah. Which I saw in theaters. I saw Batteries Not Included. Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. Wow. That's the only time that movie's been referred to.
I can't ever hear Cocoon without immediately thinking Batteries Not Included.
Because, it has that same kind of theme to it. Yeah, and I think they both have... Don't they both have Don Amici in it?
Probably.
I think so.
Don Amici?
I think... I have to look this up, because now I'm going to be looking stupid on that. No, Hume Cronin was in both movies.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a medical condition.
Yeah. He's got Hume Cronin.
He's got Epstein-Barr with a twist of line.
Yeah.
Call it a Hume Cronin.
And yeah, it probably has, because Spielberg and Kennedy Marshall and all these guys were producers on that, and I think they were all producers on Cocoon as well. Because, yeah, when you said that seemed very logical to me, that those follow each other some way in spirit, even though they don't really.
Let's do some questions.
Yeah, okay.
Question. I got something to say. I want the truth.
I am listening.
Right.
So this one might take up all of our question time because it's so rich a topic. But what's the best sports movie? Which is this is probably, of all of the wasting time musing about movies, this is probably what I think about the most. What sports movies I think are the best. And we've talked about several. And of course, then there's always the issue of, does something like Field of Dreams count as a sports movie or not?
Or Teen Wolf.
Yeah. Teen Wolf counts more than Field of Dreams because Teen Wolf, they actually show a bunch of basketball in that movie.
Right.
What do you guys think? I'm partial these days to Field of Dreams and Tin Cup, if Field of Dreams is accepted as a sports movie. And if it's not, I'll just go Tin Cup. I know you love The Natural. There seems to be a lot of people who always answer this question with Major League, and I want to kill those people because I think you can enjoy Major League, but that's not a great movie.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy it as a comedy and everything, but like if you ask me best sports movies and everything, I'm never going to come up with Major League.
Right. You would go to Bull Durham before you went to Major League.
Right, which is one I was gonna mention. That Bull Durham is in there, and I would also mention Tin Cup just because that movie's just so fun and everything. The Natural is definitely going to be in that list because that's the reason why I love baseball is because of stuff like that. And when I grew up, all the World Series that were going on in the mid '80s had those kind of dramatics. Kirk Gibson home run, and a lot of these series went 7 games and stuff like that. And The Natural was just sort of a reinforcement of why you loved baseball, even though it was a little bit on the fantastic side and everything, hitting the lights and smashing and making fireworks display go off and all that. I was thinking of this when we were trying to come up with a sports movie to do for our, when we had FanDuel and everything. Obviously Rocky's going to be in there too. I was thinking actually maybe possibly doing Rocky. But I was thinking there's not really any great football movies.
I disagree.
No, hold on a second. Like, the ones that are considered that, I don't know. Like, what would you consider a great football movie?
Well, Chris and I were texting about this not too long ago because I was watching the end of
Any Given Sunday?
Any Given Sunday. I can't stand that movie because it gets so many things wrong, but it gets really good performances and really good scenes, really good nuggets in there. And conceptually, it's really strong. But the execution of it is just very grating to me, with all the flashbacks and all the weird editing interspersed with it, and just the over-the-topness and stuff like that.
You mean the Oliver Stone-ness?
The Oliver Stone-itude is what gets to me. But, and that kind of got me thinking, because it is hard. Directors can't get football right, typically. But one that actually did get it right for me was Remember the Titans. And Remember the Titans just...
Chris just grimaced.
Just from, and it's less about the football, but it's more about the totality of everything, and the training and the stuff that has to come together for team building, which is such a huge part.
And the erasing of racism.
Exactly. Well, it's done, right?
One of the things I love about that, by the way, if you watch Remember the Titans, I think it's a good movie. That movie is filled with people who went on to be huge actors.
Yes.
Like the guy from The Wire and Ryan Gosling. Like, the movie is full of people who went
really,
on to
really
fame.
like baby Hayden Panettiere. Okay, I will take that back. Remember the Titans is pretty good. Friday Night Lights is probably one of your better football movies, but that's the thing about it, is that it's so hard to make them right because you can't just throw a bunch of stunt guys out there and make football look right, and you can't make a bunch of actors go out there and make football look right. It really goes for a lot of sports movies too. Like I was talking about with The Natural, was that Redford hits a clear pop up or whatever, and it's like considered a home run. And I remember when Wesley Snipes was doing The Fan. I think John Kruk was a baseball consultant on that movie, and he's like, Wesley Snipes would never be able to hit a baseball with this swing, But it sort of happens on a lot of these movies because it's hard to get sports right. You have to get
That's why he got game, went and got Ray Allen.
Yeah.
A real athlete, and his acting is terrible in that.
Right. And
the basketball is authentic.
Yeah, and so it's hard to make those movies just because it's hard to replicate those sports in a realistic way. And even Kevin Sunday does it where it's like every hit is a crunching, like career-ending hit.
Okay, so my point is that it gets, if you use sports as a facilitator for the broader story, and here's another example about a football movie that wasn't really a football movie. It's Varsity Blues.
Yeah.
And I love Varsity Blues, and I can watch it anytime it's on. And football, I mean, I don't want to watch James Vanderbeek pretend to throw a football. Like it's gross to watch, but still, the whole mechanism that it puts into place, and the relationships, especially in high school. That's why Friday Night Lights, the TV show, did so well, is that it used football as kind of this narrative engine to kind of drive all of the discord and the relationships and all that stuff. And that's what I like about that's when a football movie gets it right, rather than Any Given Sunday, where it uses everything else to get to a football scene.
Yeah.
I think that's where they miss the most.
Yeah, that's funny.
And there's so many, there's like a couple of older ones, like North Dallas 40 and The Longest Yard, not the Adam Sandler, but like they're pretty good movies, but like you don't go and like I got to watch that again, after you see it or anything. But yeah, it's hard to get those sports movies right, and that's why I think stuff like baseball and boxing. That's why boxing always rules on these things. Like obviously you got to say Rocky on these. You can focus on individuals and everything, and there's more, especially Tin Cup, the golf. That's as individual as it gets. When it gets to those type of things, it's good. But then when it's like these team sports, I guess Slapshot's okay, but but it's like even Slapshot. I mean, it's not really a hockey movie as much as it's like just about Paul Newman and him being drunk all the time and banging women and stuff.
I'm going to pull a sports movie out of my ass for you right now. Mm-hmm. The Sixth Man, starring one of the Wayans brothers and Kadeem Hardison.
Oh my God! Wow, the Sixth Man.
Kadeem Hardison dies. It's his brother. They're on the same college basketball team, and then comes back like angels in the outfield and helps the team win through ghostly activities.
Nice.
And there is that was a huge genre for Disney, right? Angels in the Outfield.
I'm not being serious, by the way. It's a terrible movie. You should never watch it.
But it has that scene. Sixth Man has that scene where like who is it? Who's the main guy?
It's either Sean or Marlon Wayans. I just don't remember which one. And Kadeem Hardison's the ghost.
Yeah, he's looking. He's like at the urinal and he's like sitting. He's talking to Kadeem Hardison and everything. And the white guy's like, I had the same problem, thinking he's talking down to his penis. And the guy, and he turns around and he's like, believe me, my problem's way bigger than yours. That's the one redeeming moment of the Sixth Man.
I like, I probably shouldn't, but I like that movie, The Rookie, with Dennis, what's his name?
Dennis Quaid.
Yeah, and that was sort of the same Remember the Titans, feel-good family sports movie. We've had a lot of those, right? Mm-hmm. Like We Are Marshall, and When the Game Stands Tall, and this. It seems like every year we get some kind of
flubber,
schmaltzy,
$1 million
Air Bud. Shaolin Soccer.
Yeah, like hey, I love Shaolin Soccer.
I do too.
That's a great movie.
I do too. Well, then you have people who will probably argue that something like The Karate Kid is technically a sports movie.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess so.
And so it's a very subjective discussion because it's so wide. But if I had to pick one sports movie to put in and watch right now, it's going to be Tin Cup. Mm-hmm. There's no question.
Yeah, can't argue with that.
Yeah. We didn't even mention Hoosiers.
Oh, Jesus. What the fuck's wrong with us?
Hoosiers is awesome.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to talk about another one of my favorite lines from Tin Cup. When he starts breaking all his clubs, and the psychiatrist says to one of his friends, is this normal behavior for him? He says, he and normal don't often collide in the same sentence. Well, let's answer another question.
So yeah, let's do another question.
All right, so the question is, what are some of our favorite movies about making movies? And I know Chris talked about State and Maine in a previous podcast, and I'm not lying when I tell you I've watched it 3 times since then, because it keeps coming on HBO, and I always choose it over everything else because it's so funny from end to end. My very favorite overall movie about making movies is The Player.
Yeah.
Robert Altman, and it's really about murder more than making movies, but all the making movie stuff is so dead on and so authentic and hilarious that I find that movie eminently rewatchable.
Yeah, I love the opening, one take in there where you have a guy pitching The Graduate 2. I think you have the original author of the book pitching the sequel to The Graduate. And you also have, you have Fred Ward sitting there talking about how great the opening one take in Touch of Evil is. But there's another guy coming up with all this other stuff all these other movies you've never heard of that did that same type of thing. And he's like, but Fred Ward's like, oh, I never heard of that. But Touch of Evil is really, and not to impugn Touch of Evil because that's a great movie. But I love the opening of that. There's several. I mean, Living in Oblivion is probably if it's not The Player, then I'm gonna say Living in Oblivion because Steve Buscemi is him as a director on an independent film, and everything is going wrong, and because it's an independent movie, but it's also like a series of it starts off like it's a bunch of dreams or like it's not real life until like later in the movie. But all the things that happen in those dreams are things that actually happen on independent movie sets, that are because they don't have enough money and they have unprofessional actors a lot of times and not the best of the best working on the thing. But Steve Buscemi is so funny, especially the scene where he's trying to get the best performance out of Catherine Keener and an older actress, and like they can't get it right. And it's like, all right, let's take 5. And then while the camera's off, they proceed to do the best take ever, and his blow up after that is legendary to me. Living in Oblivion is definitely in that conversation for me.
Well, speaking of movies that Chris mentioned earlier, I think this is when we were talking about 1999. There's a independent movie called American Movie.
Yeah.
Where it's two friends from Wisconsin that they get together and try to make this horror movie called Coven. Yeah. And due to their accents, they keep calling it Coven. And it's hilarious. It's this enthusiastic, crazy director that's just super into film and super into horror and stuff like that. And his sidekick that's nearly mute, if I remember correctly. And just the enthusiasm of getting this movie made with no money and no talent and no resources and everything was just awesome.
Yeah, and it has that one line too that I always go back to where, if we've been accused of like not giving a movie a fair shake or something like that. There's that one line he says in there. He's like, it's like no one in the history of movies has ever gone into a movie theater and watched something and then, saw something that said, well, if we had this set of circumstances, we would have made this, we would have put that up on the screen there and it would have been better. And nobody has ever thought like that movie's good because, if I can imagine what it would have been like,
Another one I wanted to mention, I think I just brought it up by title when we last talked about State and Maine, but it's called The Last Shot with Matthew Broderick and Alec Baldwin, who's also in State and Maine. Very tonally similar to State and Maine, just not quite as consistent with all the jokes. But it's basically Alec Baldwin's basically this government guy who is going to fake the production of a film to catch the mobsters and the Teamsters doing dirty stuff, and so he gets this patsy movie theater employee who wrote a script. His name is Stephen Schatz, played by Matthew Broderick, and hires him to direct. And Broderick just doe-eyed buys it the whole way through, and it's really funny. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I saw it on accident, but very very much like State and Maine. Lots of good industry jokes, witty banter. And great performances.
Well, and in a weird way, we could also even include, even though I guess it's somewhat cheating, but Argo into this. Even though it's not really about making movies, all the stuff before they actually go
is about making movies.
and all the cynical stuff about making movies and like making the posters and like going and having fundraisers.
That table read.
Yeah, and the table read, and you know, and just, you know, the general. I love the "or go fuck yourself" and all that. But I would also include that, even though it's not really about making movies, it does have a good section there.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah,
I agree.
Well, that's the Sincast for this week. Signing off, this is Chris Atkinson with Jeremy Scott and Barrett Sher. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Comment on our episodes on our SoundCloud page. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. And be sure to visit cinemasins.com.